Anybody who's ever played sports and had to compete for a spot, for a guy to put their kid on it, it happens all the time, and it's wrong. It's wrong in Little League. It's wrong in high school. It's wrong in college. And it's wrong in the pros. Anybody who's honest, the only reason that people didn't go out and go off on LeBron is because he's a star. And they don't want the wrath or be able to say, well, LeBron stopped me from doing this, or I can't get tickets to the Lakers, or like they're afraid.
Rob Parker didn't just criticize LeBron James this time. He completely unloaded. The reason the conversation is blowing up right now is because it touches on something sports fans care deeply about: earning your spot. When Parker called out LeBron and Bronny James over nepotism, he wasn't trying to soften the message or dance around the topic. Instead, he said what many people have quietly been thinking but were hesitant to say publicly: that the situation raises real questions about fairness, opportunity, and whether every player truly has to earn their place in the league.
Bronny, soon as he was drafted, became the poster child for nepotism in sports.
So here's the real question many fans are debating right now. If this were any other player in the National Basketball Association not named LeBron James, would Bronny James even be on a roster today? Critics like Rob Parker argue that the opportunity Bronny received is tied directly to his father's influence and legacy, while others believe he still has the potential to develop into a legitimate NBA player over time. The debate ultimately comes down to how much weight should be given to potential, marketability, and family connections versus pure performance and merit. What's your honest take on it?
Right there. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Between working a job where people do nepotism is bad. So I'm the first one to say it. What Danny Ainge's doing is bad. Nepotism is bad. A lot of companies won't even allow it because it is bad. I don't believe the Utah Jazz should hire Danny Ainge's son. So I'll be the first one on the record. But when it comes to athletics and you having to compete to get on the field.
Rob Parker's argument is simple, but it makes many people uncomfortable. In his view, nepotism is wrong at every level of sports, whether it's Little League, high school, college, or the professional stage. Parker believes the same standard should apply in the National Basketball Association. He argues that the main reason more people didn't strongly challenge LeBron James over the drafting of Bronny James is because of LeBron's superstar status and influence across the league and media. According to Parker, many analysts, reporters, and insiders hesitate to push the issue too far because they worry about backlash, losing access to players, or being shut out of future interviews and relationships. In his view, that kind of pressure shapes the public conversation around LeBron more than many fans realize, creating a situation where criticism is often softer or more cautious than it might be for other players.
Michael Jordan owned the damn team. He didn't put his two sons on the team. He could have. And Bronny's not right. And he proved this year he's not ready for the NBA. He's a marginal player at best.
Rob Parker's comparison hit especially hard. He pointed out that Michael Jordan once owned an NBA team and had the power to put his own sons on the roster if he wanted to, but he never did. He also mentioned Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, who could have easily placed his sons in uniform and called them end-of-the-bench players, but he chose not to. Parker's point is that once you cross that line in competitive sports, it stops being about fairness and starts being about favoritism. That's why, in his view, the Bronny situation feels different from a typical office job or front office hire, because roster spots in professional sports are supposed to be earned purely through performance and merit.
If this was anybody else, if this was anybody other than LeBron James, he'd be ridiculed trying to get his son in the NBA.
Of course.
We saw it down with Urban Meyer trying to get Tim Tebow a job as a tight end. Right? His next door neighbor, his friend. And the player said, F no, he's no good. There's 20 kids in college who played tight end who deserved that job.
They were going
and what happened? Tim Tebow didn't get a job because it wasn't right. And Bronny's not right, and he proved this year he's not ready. He's not ready for the NBA. He's a marginal player at best. I refuse to sit here and act like it's okay. It ain't the same thing as a job. If I own a store or I own something, that you people hire people all the time. It still ain't right. I just said that from the jump.
Okay.
Nepotism ain't right.
Okay.
Unless you own a family store and you can hire whoever you want if it's your business.
Now, Defenders of the move often point out that Bronny James was only the 55th pick in the National Basketball Association draft, as if that somehow removes the controversy. But critics like Rob Parker argue that this explanation actually makes the situation more questionable. Second-round picks rarely receive guaranteed deals, long-term security, or special treatment. Yet Bronny did, and Parker's argument is that it wasn't because of overwhelming production or college dominance, but largely because of his connection to LeBron James. From that perspective, the criticism isn't about hate, it's about how opportunities are distributed in such a competitive league. Some supporters also bring up Bronny's health scare and cardiac arrest, and most people agree that the most important thing is that he recovered and is healthy. But critics say that isn't really the basketball argument. Their focus is on readiness for the professional level. Even before that incident, they argue that Bronny hadn't yet established himself as a dominant college player and might have benefited from more development time before making the jump to the NBA. Critics argue that during his early NBA minutes, Bronny James didn't look like a player who had clearly separated himself as pro-ready. Instead, some observers said he appeared overwhelmed at times, nervous, hesitant, and still adjusting to the speed and physicality of the National Basketball Association. From that perspective, the concern isn't just about performance but about timing. Being placed into that environment before fully developing can feel less like normal player development and more like being thrown into the fire too early. Critics say that kind of situation can make the transition even harder for a young player trying to find confidence and rhythm at the professional level.
A Western Conference executive spoke to Athlon Sports about Bronny James, and during the conversation, he said, quote, that he expects Bronny to be a regular in the rotation next season. 10-15 minutes, talked about his offseason growth from summer league to start of the season to the end of the regular season. So he's expecting that Bronny is going to be getting regular minutes with the big club next year. What's interesting about that is Bronny, soon as he was drafted, became the poster child.
What really fueled the nepotism debate was what came next. Reports cited by outlets like Athlon Sports claim that Bronny James could become a regular rotation player next season, potentially receiving around 10 to 15 minutes per game. For some fans, that's where the benefit of the doubt toward LeBron James started to fade. In their view, the discussion was no longer just about giving his son a chance to enter the National Basketball Association, but about giving him meaningful playing time on a team that says it's trying to compete for championships. Critics also pointed to another example around the league. The Utah Jazz brought Austin Ainge, the son of Danny Ainge, into a significant front office role. Commentators like Rob Parker labeled that nepotism as well, and acknowledged it as such. But the distinction Parker emphasized is that a front office position doesn't take playing time away from athletes competing on the court. In his view, that difference matters because roster spots and game minutes in the NBA are limited opportunities that players spend their entire careers working to earn. Front office nepotism may be questionable, but on-court nepotism affects competition much more directly. When it happens in professional sports, it can impact roster spots, playing time, and the livelihoods of athletes who spent their entire lives working for that opportunity. That's why many critics say sports have always been treated differently. Once the color barrier was broken, competition was supposed to be about merit. When the game starts, performance is exposed immediately and there's nowhere to hide. If someone isn't ready for that level, everyone can see it. That's part of why the debate has resonated with players, former players, and fans who believe opportunities on the court should always be earned. Rob Parker also pointed out that LeBron James' influence can change how openly people speak about the situation, arguing that some media figures soften their criticism because they don't want to risk losing access or being labeled anti-LeBron. But now that LeBron is closer to the end of his career, more people feel comfortable speaking freely, and the timing of that shift isn't a coincidence. Critics argue this isn't about hating Bronny James, but about protecting him from being put in a situation he might not be fully ready for. They believe that if development was the main priority, staying in college longer or spending time in the G League could have helped him grow without the intense spotlight that comes with playing in the NBA. Once a player steps onto an NBA floor, the league doesn't slow down to let them develop at their own pace. It exposes every weakness immediately. Some critics also worry about what happens in the future if similar expectations surround Bryce James. At that point, the debate could grow even louder, because the issue would no longer just be about opportunity but about whether family influence is shaping who gets a chance at the highest level of the sport. Critics argue that situations like this feel different in sports because the consequences play out directly on the court. When someone is placed in that spotlight before they are fully ready, it can feel unfair to players who fought for years to earn their spot. Some observers say that by bringing Bronny James into the league so quickly, LeBron James may have unintentionally put his son under a level of attention and pressure he wasn't fully prepared to handle. Instead of developing quietly, every performance becomes a national conversation. People who have played competitive basketball often point out that locker rooms notice everything. Teammates quickly recognize who earned their opportunity and who might still be developing. Once the game starts, a last name or reputation doesn't matter. Performance does. Critics say that if players believe someone is receiving minutes they didn't fully earn, it can quietly create frustration, even if it's never said publicly. That tension can affect others fighting to stay in the league as well, including undrafted players, second-round picks, and those grinding in the G League hoping for their one opportunity in the National Basketball Association. Critics argue that when a roster spot goes to someone because of influence rather than production, it can mean another player's opportunity disappears. In the National Basketball Association, every roster spot, contract, and minute matters, especially for players on the edge of the league who are fighting to prove they belong. That's why some people reject the idea that the 55th pick doesn't matter. For them, every slot represents years of work for someone trying to break through. Those same critics say that when Bronny James finally received opportunities on the court, many were expecting him to silence the debate by proving he could handle the moment. Instead, some observers felt he still looked like a young player adjusting to the speed and pressure of the league, something that isn't unusual for rookies but becomes magnified because of the attention surrounding him and the legacy of LeBron James.